Articles from the Labor Standard by Friedrich Engels. First article, To the Working Men of Europe in 1877, Part 4, published March 24th, 1878. Our readers will have noticed that in the three preceding articles, there has been scarcely any mention made of one of the most important countries of Europe, France, and for this reason. In the countries hitherto treated of, the action of the working class, though essentially a political action, is not intimately mixed up with general, or so to say official politics. The working class of Germany, Italy, Belgium, etc. is not yet a political power in the state. It is a political power only prospectively, and if the official parties in some of these countries, conservatives, liberals, or radicals, have to reckon with it, it is merely because its rapid onward progress makes it evident that in a very short time the proletarian party will be strong enough to make its influence felt. But in France it is different. The workmen of Paris, seconded by those of the large provincial towns, have ever since the Great Revolution been a power in the state. They have been for nearly 90 years the fighting army of progress. At every great crisis of French history, they descended into the streets, armed themselves as best they could, threw up barricades and provoked the battle, and it was their victory or defeat which decided the future of France for years to come. From 1789 to 1830, the revolutions of the middle class were fought out by the workmen of Paris. It was they who conquered the Republic in 1848. Having mistaken that Republic to mean emancipation of labor, they were cruelly undeceived by the defeat inflicted on them in June of the same year. They resisted on the barricades Louis Napoleon's coup d'etat 1851 and were again defeated. They swept away in September 1870 the defunct empire which the middle-class radicals were too cowardly to touch. In March 1871, Thiers' attempt to take away from them the arms with which they had defended Paris against foreign invasion forced them into the revolution of the Commune and the protracted struggle which ended with its bloody extinction. A national working class which thus, for nearly a century, not only has taken a decisive part in every crisis of the history of its own country, but at the same time has always been the advanced guard of European revolution, such a working class cannot live the comparatively secluded life which is still the proper sphere of action of the rest of the continental workmen. Such a working class as that of France is bound to its past history and by its past history. Its history, no less than its acknowledged decisive fighting power, has mixed it up indissolubly with the general political development of the country. And thus, we cannot give a retrospect of the action of the French working class without entering into French politics generally. Whether the French working class has been fighting its own battle or the battle of the liberal, radical, or republican middle class, every defeat it suffered has hitherto been followed by an oppressive political reaction as violent as it was enduring. Thus, the defeats of June 1848 and December 1851 were succeeded by the 18 years of the Bonapartist Empire, during which the press was fettered, the right of meeting and of association suppressed, and the working class consequently deprived of every means of intercommunication and organization. The necessary result was that when the Revolution of September 1870 came, the workmen had no other men to put into office but those middle-class radicals who under the Empire had formed the official parliamentary opposition, and who as a matter of course betrayed them and their country. After the stamping out of the Commune, the working class, disabled for years in their fighting power, had but one immediate interest: to avoid the recurrence of such another protracted reign of repression, and with it the necessity of again fighting, not for their own direct emancipation, but for a state of things permitting them to prepare for the final emancipatory struggle. Now, in France there are four great political parties, three monarchist: the Legitimists, Orleanists, and Bonapartists, each with a separate pretender to the crown, and the Republican Party. Whichever of the three pretenders were to ascend the throne, he would in every case be supported by a small minority only of the people. He would consequently have to rely upon force only. Thus, the reign of violence, the suppression of all public liberties and political rights, which the working class must wish to avoid, was the necessary concomitant of every monarchist restoration. On the other hand, the maintenance of the established republican government left them at least the chance of obtaining such a degree of personal and public liberty as would allow them to establish a working-class press, an agitation by meetings, and an organization as an independent political party, and moreover, the conservation of the republic would save them the necessity of delivering a separate battle for its future reconquest. It was thus another proof of the high instinctive political intelligence of the French working class that as soon as, on the 16th May last, the great conspiracy of the three monarchist factions declared war against the Republic, the workmen, one and all, proclaimed the maintenance of the Republic to be their chief immediate object. No doubt in this, they acted as the tail of the middle-class Republicans and Radicals, but a working class which has no press, no meetings, no clubs, no political societies, what else can it be but the tail of the radical middle-class party? What can it do, in order to gain its political independence, but support the only party which is bound to secure to the people generally, and therefore to the workmen too, such liberties as will admit of independent organization? Some people say, the workmen at the last election ought to have put up their own candidates, but even in those places where they could have done so successfully, where were the working class candidates, well known enough amongst their own class to find the necessary support? Why, the government since the Commune has taken good care to arrest, as a participator in that insurrection, every workman who made himself known even by private agitation in his own district of Paris. The victory of the Republicans at the elections last November was signal. It was followed by still more signal triumphs at the departmental, municipal, and supplementary elections which followed it. The monarchist conspiracy would, perhaps, not have given way for all that, but its hand was lamed by the unmistakable attitude of the army. Not only were there numerous Republican officers, especially in the lower grades, but what was more decisive, the mass of the soldiers refused to march against the Republic. That was the first result of the reorganization of the army, by which bought substitutes had been done away with and the army transformed into a fair representation of the young men of all classes. Thus, the conspiracy broke down without having to be broken up by force. And this, too, was much in the interest of the working class which, 2 weeks yet after the bloodletting of 1871, can have no wish to waste again its greatest, its fighting power, in struggles for the benefit of others, or to engage in a series of violent collisions before it has recovered its full strength. But this Republican victory has yet another significance. It proves that since 1870, the country people had made a great step in advance. Hitherto, every working-class victory gained in Paris was nullified in a very short time by the reactionist spirit of the small peasantry who formed the great mass of the French population. Since the beginning of this century, the French peasantry had been Bonapartist. The Second Republic, established by the Paris workingmen in February 1848, had been cancelled by the 6 million peasant votes given to Louis Napoleon in December following. But the Prussian invasion of 1870 has shaken the imperialist faith of the peasantry, and the elections of November last prove that the mass of the country population had become Republican, and this is a change of the highest importance. It does not only mean that henceforth all monarchist restoration has become hopeless in France. It means also the approaching alliance between the workingmen of the towns and the peasantry of the country. The small peasant proprietors established by the Great Revolution are proprietors of the soil but in name. Their farms are mortgaged to usurers. Their crops are spent in payment of interest and law expenses. The notary, the attorney, the bailiff, the auctioneer are constantly threatening at their doors. Their position is fully as bad as that of the workingmen and almost as insecure. And if these peasants now turn from Bonapartism to the Republic, they show by this that they no longer expect an improvement of their condition from those imperialist miracles which Louis Napoleon ever promised and never performed. Thiers' faith in the mysterious powers of salvation held by a, quote, emperor of peasants has been rudely dispelled by the Second Empire. The spell is broken. The French peasantry are at last in a state of mind rational enough to look out for the real causes of the chronic distress and for the practical means to do away with it. And once set a thinking, they must soon find out that their only remedy lies in an alliance with the only class that has no interest in their present miserable condition, the working class of the town. Thus, however contemptible the present Republican government of France may be, the final establishment of the Republic has at last given the French workingmen the ground upon which they can organize themselves as an independent political party and fight their future battles not for the benefit of others, but for their own. The ground, too, upon which they can unite with the hitherto hostile mass of peasantry and thus render future victories not, as heretofore, short-lived triumphs of Paris over France, but final triumphs of all the oppressed classes of France, led by the workmen of Paris and the large provincial towns. You have reached the end of Articles from the Labor Standard by Friedrich Engels, first article, to the Working Men of Europe in 1877, Part 4. Click on the links at the end of this video to go to the playlist or the next chapter if it's available. If you enjoy this content and would like to support the channel, please like and subscribe.